Hey man, today I'm going to demonstrate graphically to you that bushcraft knives are silly and batoning is the most useless survival skill. There's nothing more useless than batoning as a survival skill. But in order to do that, I have to go get a bushcraft knife. I don't even own one. So we got to go to the world's greatest store. I'm going to take the Organic Militia. We'll bring you men along, and we got to go get a bushcraft knife. Cue the intro. Alright, here we are at the greatest store ever. Me and 3/7 of the Organic Militia. We're here to get a bushcraft knife, but also it's one of the private's birthdays, so we're gonna have to get a birthday present too. Alright. I'm telling you, it's the greatest store ever. I just love it.
Does he like gadgets now?
That's the private whose birthday it is.
Does he like?
Here we go. Here's the fun stuff. Alright, that's not what today's about, but today's about a bushcraft knife. Oh, it's in good shape.
Look at this bow.
Alright, let me find the bushcraft knife and the birthday present real quick. Well, the greatest store ever didn't have what we needed. But we did get an $18 cant hook, and the private got himself a car. So let's see what else. We don't want to go to China Mart, so we're going to have to find something else. Maybe we'll try the other pawn shop. First, no matter where you fall in on this debate, you know, small axe Tomahawk side, bushcraft knife side, may I ask you to check out my friend Adam over at northpointaxe.com. He's got his own forge. He hand forges everything from actual, literal, if you're going to be honest with yourself, what a bushcraft knife would have to be, as in a sax, a historic sax. Brass knuckles, he makes the axes. He made all of these. Check out the revolting axe, or even all the way at the top. I don't know if you can see past one of the privates has a birthday. The Francisca. The revolting axe is named for us. The Francisca we actually asked him to make. We're very proud of both of those. He has the knives. He has actual, what you actually would use in a survival situation. Look at that. Talk about durable. Historically interesting, also just fun stuff. Check out Adam at northpointaxe.com. He was a subscriber to this channel long before he ever had a business or a forge. So we do everything we can to support him. Thank you. All right, so the bushcraft knife, I should say it drives me nuts, but I roll my eyes, I don't get it. So here's the idea, and the guy who represents this for me is Dave Canterbury. A long time, you know, one of the early YouTube survivalists. I think he goes way past YouTube, and he's all about the bushcraft knife and batoning, which really does drive me nuts. So I'm going to try to, real quick, without boring you a whole lot, tell you why this drives me so crazy. Most of you who know me know I'm a Tomahawk guy. Love them. Hand axe too, but I really like Tomahawks for survival as bug out because of how easy it is to replace the handles. But this isn't really about the Tomahawk, although it kind of is, because I'm debunking the big rival of the Tomahawk, the bushcraft knife for survival and bug out. Now, before we get into any of this, let me tell you something. What the bushcraft knife is better at than a Tomahawk, and you might be surprised, and that's fighting. We're not talking about a fighting implement here. This is a survival implement. And actually a long knife like this one actually might be better for fighting than a Tomahawk. And if you don't believe me, the Tomahawk has the reach and it has way more power, but there's a really great channel called Scala Gladiatoria. And that's this guy who is all into old ancient weapons and old weapons and melee style weapons, and he talked about it a lot. I won't rehash all of his stuff, but what he points out is that, you know, this knife has what, a 12-inch cutting surface, so if you slash, you're much more likely to hit, whereas my Tomahawk only has like a 2-inch cutting surface, so it's much easier to hit with this, and they stab too. They're far more versatile. Obviously, one hit with the Tomahawk is far more powerful than one hit with this, but both do enough damage, you know. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about bug out, survival. Why the survival knife is a ridiculous idea. We all know where it started. It started with the Rambo movies, which this one's kind of based off of. Let's talk about what a survival knife is first, though, what it's not. It's not this one. This is not a survival knife. This is a hollow-handled Harbor Freight Special, the the prepper librarian gave me because thought it was funny. I don't know why. I mean, he's a good guy and he helps us out a lot, and he brought us this. And this is not a bushcraft knife. It has a hollow handle, and it would break easily. This is not a bushcraft knife. This is more like a butcher knife. It doesn't have the heft to do some long-term chopping. I mean, you could do some, but it can't replace the Tomahawk. Again, not a bushcraft knife. See if I can even do this again. Great fighting knife, but not a bushcraft. Great for batoning, but not a bushcraft knife. Because again, you chop all day long and not get anything down. I actually had to go find a bushcraft knife, and I couldn't find one that I wanted to spend the money on because I don't like them to begin with. This is the closest I got. I don't have no idea what it is. But my whole idea of a bushcraft knife is you don't need a tomahawk or hand axe, so it has to be able to do a certain amount of chopping. Now all the bushcraft knife guys say, oh, you got to have a saw, which is actually the dumbest survival implement there is. When guys tell me you got to carry a saw in your bug out gear, I don't know that they've ever used a saw that much, a hand saw all that much. We won't go into all that right now. I'll do a whole nother video on why saws are awful for survival and bug out, so if the saws are awful already, your bushcraft knife is no good. But let me see if I can demonstrate this a little better than just talking at you. Okay, so here's the argument for the bushcraft knife as I understand it, and I thought about another guy, Nut and Fancy. He's the one who.
What is that?
Wow. My father-in-law's bush hogging around the garden for us, and it sounds like he just found a stump. All right, anyway, me and my bushcraft knife will go up there and rescue him from that stump here in just a minute. It was Nut and Fancy who really got my goat on this whole issue, because he had this whole video about how stupid tomahawks are and how bushcraft knives are the thing. So here's the argument, and this is what it really boils down to, is that a bushcraft knife is easier to use. So they will say, and I'm not even going to demonstrate this, they're going to come out and cut a tree this size down, and they might cut it with their knife or they might cut it with their saw, and then they section it, they bucket, what we call it, into nice. He really likes that stuff. They section it, they bucket into nice little firewood sections like you'd use in the house in a little cook stove, and then they take their bushcraft knife and they put it on top of the section, and they take another piece of wood and they hammer it through, and they split it all down into these nice little perfect pieces, sizes of firewood. Most of you already can hear the disgust in my voice. You know, I love Wrangler Star, but it's almost like Wrangler Star was, you know, cooking Mrs. W coffee at camping the way. I mean, it's just stupid the way they do it. So here's why that's stupid. First off, look. Firewood. You don't cut shit. You don't cut anything. I can walk through these woods and find firewood everywhere, and I don't cut it, I don't chop it. That's a waste of calories. Oh, but it doesn't have a nice straight edge, and we don't baton it. Why? Why? Why do you baton it? I don't get this. It looks really nice. It does. It looks fun, like a bunch of college-educated weirdos left the city, and they got to do something for all weekend at their state park. So this is what they do. You know, they cut nice little pieces of firewood. This is not something important or useful in the survival / bug out situation. Look, look. Firewood. No one cut nothing. It's everywhere, and you don't cut it. In fact, if you bug out while you're doing a patrol, the kids are out picking up this stuff. This whole baton thing to get your firewood is ridiculous. Now let me show you. I will just do a quick chop with this, and I'll try to demonstrate something. So we got this little pole, and I didn't bring out the Tomahawk because this isn't about the Tomahawk, but this is a little pole you might use to make a shelter, all right? It works pretty good on that little stuff. Now the Tomahawk would have done that in one shot. This is a dead piece, but what if I needed to cut this down to make a barricade or a bigger shelter? You know, what if I bug out with my whole family? What the hell is this going to do for me? I will spend all day on a tree like that. And that tree, that's not a ridiculous sized tree to have to be able to cut. To, you know, if you make a palisade, a barricade, that's a completely reasonable sized tree that you would have to cut on a bug out or a survival situation. And your survival knife isn't going to cut it. Literally, no play on words intended. I wish I was smart enough to have thought about that beforehand. So the idea of a survival bushcraft knife to me is insane. So here's another problem. You know, this is actually not a really good knife. Think about it. You know, the things you might need to do it, let's just take something out of our everyday life. You get the mail and you want to cut your mail and you look cool with it. You pull out your knife to use your knife as a letter cutter. This would be awful for that. Think about skinning an animal with this. Every single one of us, if we go out, we actually have a knife on us. We have a small, useful knife. This is a useful size knife for just about anything you'd want to. Let's see, have I used this one for the Passover lamb? I think I use a slightly longer one for the Passover lamb. I use a buck 115. This is just a buck, smaller buck. That buck 115 is about yay big. It's like a little sheath knife. So anything you actually needed a knife for, you're not using this. You're using this because it's handy and it's light and it's the right size. And this is just a giant pain in the ass. So it is a bad knife. And a bushcraft knife has to be, if it's for it to be a bushcraft knife, it's got to be a Crocodile Dundee. That's not a knife. Well, this is a knife. It's got to be that Rambo Crocodile Dundee style knife. And it is heavier than the Tomahawk. I meant to weigh this one. This one is really light. You can see this wouldn't stand up. If I tried to chop that tree down with this would be all bent and the handle would be busted and it wouldn't work. Whereas if I brought my Tomahawk out here, I'd have this on the ground and literally, well, if I was motivated to be less than 20 minutes, I could have this on the ground with my small Tomahawk. And that Tomahawk would be fine for years worth of use. This bushcraft knife, or almost any bushcraft knife, would be almost useless at the end. And it's not a good knife because it's too big and unwieldy, and it's not a good chopping tool. The only thing it is, and it is good for this. Now listen, it's good for this. The only thing it's good for is fighting. It's a good fighting implement. But you know what? If all it is for fighting, then be honest with yourself. Get a sax, put another foot on it, and then have a truly good fighting implement. And then stop and ask yourself, why the hell are you putting 5 pounds into some kind of fighting blade? It's just not. It makes no sense to me. I'm not going to say, I've said it's ridiculous, I'm not going to say it's stupid. There's some smart people I know who carry bushcraft knives. If you just like a big knife, that's great, that's fine. You know, I'm going to tell one story real quick and then we're going to be done because I don't want this to get long, because you guys don't watch long videos. But you all are familiar with the Bowie knife, and you all remember, oh shucks, I forgot his name now. Was it Daniel Bowie? Colonel Sam Bowie? The guy, I can't remember his first name now, but the guy who invented the Bowie knife. You know, our ancestors were running all over this continent up until the 1850, you know, from like 15, whatever it was when they landed at Jamestown, all the way up to the 300 years, they were running around with tomahawks and small hand axes. And then whatever it was like the 1820s or something, this Bowie guy invents a Bowie knife, which is about this long, and it's got you all know what the Bowie knife is. And when he did, it was a sensation. It was this brand new idea. Everyone was like, wow, look at this giant knife. This is great. But you know what? It was a sensation because they hadn't had it up to that point because it hadn't made sense. And if you see, even up into like the gold rush and stuff, up into Alaska, if you see guys with knives, it's a butcher knife. It's a thin blade, and I almost bought one when I was out today because I thought it'd be interesting to show the contrast. They're a little thinner than this. They're about, you know what a butcher's knife is. And you know what? It's for butchering. If you tried to chop a tree down with it, you would wreck it certainly before you got that tree down, because they're so thin. They went out with those thin, light butcher knives and tomahawks and axes. And that's what they did when they were actually relying on their gear to colonize or to open up, I don't like the term colonize because we turned it into but to open up the continent, to settle the continent, they took tomahawks and axes. And when someone, about the time the thing was pretty much colonized, comes up with a big old fighting knife, because that Colonel Bowie, Damn, he's got to stay away from that part of the field. Because when that, oh yeah, stump one that time. We better go up there. When Colonel Bowie made that knife, it was a fighting knife. It wasn't a bushcraft knife. It was for fighting. And so they had their, I don't remember the pistol they had, but they had that knife to the side. It might have been the old, I can't remember. I shouldn't even speculate. So, don't talk to me about bushcraft knives, man. Please don't talk to me about batoning. What are you making, camp chairs? That's the only thing batoning is good for, is camp chairs. So if you need a camp chair and you're in an environment where you're going to want to make yourself a nice little seat and start building, you know, rustic looking furniture, yes, okay. Now you can still do that with a Tomahawk, by the way. I've got a book about it. But your bushcraft knife would make your wicker furniture easier to make. And that's about what a bushcraft knife is good for. And we may do another video about batoning because it's so stupid and it drives me so absolutely crazy. But we will definitely do a video here in the future about survival saws. Insane. Anyone who's got a survival saw hasn't researched how saws work and what it's required to keep a saw cutting. Men, we appreciate you. Thank you.